Hi guys, guess who your mystery reader is today? Me. Thought I would read to you guys today. Alright, everybody get all ready. Crisscross applesauce, get everything ready. Are you ready to listen? Because I'm going to read aloud today your language arts. Because of Winn, Dixie. Chapter 15, page 98. Are you ready? Okay, everybody get ready. Okay, here we go. The Herman W. Block Memorial Library's air conditioning unit didn't work very good, and there was only one fan, and from the minute me and Winn Dixie got into the library, he hogged it all. He laid right in front of it and wagged his tail and let it blow his fur all around him. Some of his fur was pretty loose and blew right off of him like a dandelion puff. I worried about him hogging the fan, and I worried about the fan blowing him bald. But Miss Franny said not to worry about that ever, ever, ever. That Winn Dixie could hog the fan if he wanted, and she had never in her life seen a dog made bald by a fan. Sometimes when Miss Franny was telling a story, she would have a fit. There were small fits, and they didn't last very long, but what happened was she would forget what she was saying. Been there, done that. She would just stop and start to shake her little leaf, and then you want to know what happened after that? Winn Dixie would get up from the fan and sit right next to Miss Franny Block's side. He would sit up tall, protecting her with his ears standing straight up on his head like soldiers. And when Miss Franny stopped shaking and started talking again, Winn Dixie would lick her hand and lie back down in front of the fan. Whenever Miss Franny had one of her fits, it reminded me of Winn Dixie and that thunderstorm. There was a lot of thunderstorms that morning, and I got to get real good at holding on to Winn Dixie whenever they came. I held on to him and comforted him and whispered to him and rocked him just the same way he comforted Miss Franny when she had her fits. Kind of like our moms when they comfort us and they rock us and they kind of let us have a good time in their arms and make them feel so secure. So anyways, only I held on to Winn Dixie for another reason too. I held on to him tight so he wouldn't run away. It all made me think about Gloria Dump. Wondered who confronted her when she heard those bottles knocking together, those ghosts chattering about things that had done wrong. I wanted Gloria Dump comforted, and I decided that the best way to do that was to read her a book. And I read it aloud enough to keep all those silly things away. And so I asked Miss Franny. I said, Miss Franny, I've got a grown-up friend whose eyes are going on her, and I would like to read her a book out loud. Do you have any suggestions? Suggestions? Miss Franny said. Yes, ma'am, I have suggestions. Of course I have suggestions. How about Gone with the Wind? What's that about? I asked her. Why, said Miss Franny, it's a wonderful story about the Civil War. The Civil War? Do not tell me you have never heard of the Civil War. Miss Franny Block looked like she was about to faint. She waved her hands in front of her face. I know about the Civil War, I told her. That was the war between the South and the North over slavery. Slavery, yes, said Miss Franny. It's also about states' rights and money. It was terrible, terrible war. My great-grandfather fought in that war. He was just a boy. Your great-grandfather? Yes, ma'am. Lydimus W. Block. Now, there's a story. Winn Dixie yawned real big and lay down on her side with a thump and a sigh. I swear he never heard the phrase, now there's a story. And he knew it meant we weren't going anywhere real soon. Go ahead and tell it to me, Miss Franny, I said. And I sat down cross-legged next to Winn Dixie. I pushed him and tried to get him to share the fan, but he pretended he was asleep, and he wouldn't move. I was all settled in and ready for a good story when the door banged and pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson came in. Winn Dixie sat up and stared at her, and he tried out a smile on her, but she didn't smile back, so he lay back down. I'm ready for another good book, Amanda said, slamming her book down on Miss Franny's desk. Well, said Miss Franny. "Maybe you wouldn't mind waiting? I'm telling India Opal a story about my great-grandfather." "You are, of course, more than welcome to listen. I'll be just 1 minute." Amanda sighed a real dramatic sigh and stared past me. She pretended like I wasn't interested, or she wasn't interested, but she was, I could tell. "Come sit over here," said Miss Franny. "I'll stand, thank you," said Amanda. "Suit yourself," Miss Franny shrugged. "Now, where was I? Oh, yes, Littimus W. Block. This is the next chapter. Should I stop? Because you guys know how I love to stop at the best parts. You want me to stop? Okay, I can hear you all yelling. Shh. Calm back down. Okay, fine, I'll go to chapter 16. Okay. Littimus W. Block was just a boy. Firing on Fort Sumter occurring. Miss Franny Block said she had started on her own story. "Fort Sumter," I said. "It was the firing on Fort Sumter that started the war," said Amanda. "Okay," I said, and I shrugged. Well, Littimus was 14 years old. He was strong and big, but he was still just a boy. His daddy, Artley W. Block, was already enlisted, and Littimus told his mama that he could not stand by and let the South get beat, so he went to fight at age 14. Miss Franny looked around the library, and then she whispered, "Men and boys always went to fight. They are always looking for a reason to go to war. It's the saddest thing. They have abiding notions that war is fun, and no history lesson will convince them differently." Anyway, Littimus went and enlisted, and he lied about his age. Yes, ma'am, like I said, he was a big boy, and the army took him, and Littimus went off to war, just like that. Left behind his mother and 3 sisters and went off to be a hero. But he soon found out the truth. Miss Franny closed her eyes and shook her head. "What truth?" I asked her. "Why, the truth. War. What war is," Miss Franny said with her eyes still closed. "War is awful." "Oh, awful," said Amanda. I stole a look at her face, and her face was pinched up even more than usual, like it usually is. "Ah, hello. Sorry about that. I dropped it." "War," said Miss Franny with her eyes still closed, "should not be a bad word, too." She shook her head and opened her eyes, and she pointed at me, and then she pointed at Amanda. "You or me could never imagine how bad the war is." "No, ma'am," Amanda and me said exactly at the same time, and we looked real quick at each other, and then we looked back at Miss Franny. You cannot imagine. Littimus was hungry all the time, and he was covered with all manner of vermin and fleas and lice. And in the winter, he was so cold that for sure he would freeze to death. And in the summer, there was nothing worse than the war in the summertime. It stinks very badly. And the only thing that made Littimus forget that he was hungry and itchy and hot or cold was not getting shot at. And he got shot quite a bit. And it was nothing more than he was just a child at age 14. "Did he get killed?" I asked Miss Franny. "Good grief," said Amanda. She rolled her eyes. "No, Opal," Miss Franny said. I wouldn't be standing in this room telling the story if he was killed. I wouldn't exist. No, ma'am. He had to live, but he was a changed man. Yes, ma'am, a changed man. He walked back home when the war was over. He walked from Virginia all the way back to Georgia. He didn't have a horse. Nobody had a horse except for the Yankees. And he walked, and when he got home, there was no home there. Where was it?" I asked. I didn't care if Amanda thought I was being silly at the time. I wanted to know. "Why," said Miss Franny as she shouted so loud that Winn, Dixie, and Amanda Wilkinson and me jumped. "The Yankees burned it!" "Yes, ma'am, they burned it to the ground." "What about his sisters?" Amanda asked. She moved around the desk and came and sat at the floor, and she looked up at Miss Franny. "What happened to them?" "Dead. Dead from typhoid fever." I wonder what typhoid fever is. One of you needs to look that up later on today. Later on today, not now, Connor. Oh, no, Amanda said. And his mama? I whispered. And his father? What happened to them? Asked Amanda. He died in the battlefield. Lydimus was an orphan? Oh, that's a good word for the day, orphan. I asked. Yes, ma'am, said Franny Block. Lydimus was an orphan. This is a sad story, I asked Franny. It sure is, said Amanda. I was amazed that she was agreeing with me about something at least. I'm not done yet, said Miss Franny. When Dixie started to snore, and I nudged him with my foot, and I tried to make him quit. I wanted to hear the rest of the story. It was important to me to hear how Lydimus survived after losing everything he ever loved. Can you imagine losing everything you've ever loved like that? Oh, goodness gracious. Well, all right, guys. I know that Miss Boyner has some things that she wants for you to do today for her. So I know there's a couple of words that you guys get to look up and you get to work on. So everybody look at Miss Boyner. Wherever Miss Boyner is. Hello, Miss Boyner. Thank you. And you guys, goodbye. Have a great day. Be on your best behavior. I love each and every one of you. Hopefully next week I won't be back. The doctor said no because I am too active and I stay too busy and I don't sit down for 1 second at all. And she knows me, so, but it's okay. That's what happens. So listen up. I want for every one of you to remember what I read today about the war and about the North and the South. You're also going to look up what an orphan is. And I think, Connor, I gave you a word to go look up on your technology. And Miss Boyner, I think they're all yours for today. And I hope they're on their very best behavior for Miss Howington so that Miss Howington will be a very, very, very happy person. I love you all, and I hope you have a super fantabulous weekend. Bye, guys.